Good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to the 14th Annual Canadian Fertilizer Products Forum, held by Fertilizer Canada in joint partnership with the CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and with the Fertilizer and Supplements Advisory Committee, FSAC. My name is Alison Gallinger. I'll be your moderator today. I am on the board of directors of the Fertilizer and Supplements Advisory Committee, and in my spare time, I also work at BASF, where I'm responsible for microbial registrations. So today is our 5th session. It's the Fertilizer and Supplements Advisory Committee's annual meeting. I know we're missing out on all being in the same room, and we're lucky that we have a Zoom platform that we can use to have this meeting. So the FSAC would like to thank Fertilizer Canada for hosting this Zoom platform for these meetings, and especially to Alison Watcher for all of your help in the background in preparation for this. We've got several topics coming up on our agenda today, which we'll get to in a moment. But as we've done throughout these presentations, when you have questions and comments coming up, we would like you to put them into the Q&A box at the bottom. We'll pause briefly between each of the major topics, and then we'll take some of those questions. If we run out of time before we need to move on to the next topic, we've saved some time towards the end to sort of circle back. Also, if you think of something that you didn't think to ask at the time, we'll circle back later and gather those questions. And finally, if we really truly run out of time entirely in the presentation, if you put them in the Q&A box, we will be able to monitor that, and we'll be able to capture those questions and get back to you later with a response. So very important, the Q&A box, not the chat box, Q&A box. So to start us off, we will have Loretta and Peter, who are going to take us through an introduction to the Fertilizer and Supplements Advisory Committee. So if I could get Loretta and Peter to join the presentation now and put the presentation up on the screen. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I would like to join Alison and thank everyone who are participating in this meeting. We are really glad to have this second annual meeting this year with so many news from CFIA as well. And I also would like to thank Fertilizers Canada for organizing and providing this platform in this really strange situation when we cannot meet in person. We definitely miss coffee breaks, but we do what we can, and we will try to go through the presentations and the Q&A as efficiently as possible. So I will share my screen and we'll go through our agenda today. First, we will introduce our board of director members. Then Peter McCann will update on progress of our organizations. We have Stacy Bradshaw, who will introduce you to our upgraded, wonderful new website. Next, as you all know, we have 2 working groups, and chairs of these groups will present the progress of these working groups up to date. Peter McCann will lead the beer pit session and will try to collect all the members' ideas and input. And I am very glad to tell you that CFIA members also will be joining this beer pit session and will provide their responses to our questions or comments. Next, Peter also will walk us through the business meeting, and if you have any questions, you are welcome to type them in Q&A box. So with this, I would like to ask all our board of director members to turn on the video and mics and start introducing themselves. So I will start from myself, sorry. I'm Regulatory Affairs Manager at Bayer Crop Science, and I'm also Chair of Board of Directors for Fertilizers and Supplements Advisory Committee. So Alison, could you take over?
Sure. As I introduced earlier, I am Alison Gallinger, and I am a Regulatory Product Manager at BASF Canada, and I am also co-secretary of the Fertilizer and Supplements Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Alison. Megan, could you go next?
Hi, I'm Megan Seeley. I am also a co-secretary with FSAC, and I work as the Regulatory Manager for Green Star Plant Products.
Thank you, Megan. Peter, please.
Hi guys, I am the part-time executive director of FSAC, and prior to that I was the president of IQuest Biotech in Saskatoon, working on the campus of University of Saskatchewan.
Peter.
Abdel Hadrami from Omax Agriculture Inc. and I'm the treasurer of FSAC.
Thank you. And Scott?
Hello, folks. I'm Scott Walker with an independent company called DSW Enterprise and Consulting, where I'm involved in doing a lot of R&D work for minor companies in the biological world.
Thank you very much. Thank you for our board of directors. And with this, I would like to pass microphone to Peter, who will walk us through our organization updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. The first slide is show the number of companies which we have. Currently 40 members or 40 plus members. Membership is open. We're interested to have all parties join us who are interested in the regulation of fertilizer products and supplements. Most member companies are Canadian. We have about 25% of the US. We have started 2 working groups and upper limits on heavy metals in hydroponic systems and regulation of dual property products. And we think there might be an opportunity to support 2 more. Next slide, please. What we've done in the first 10 months is we organized a working group, as I said. We supported the publishing of a long-awaited regulatory modernization initiative of fertilizer safety section by writing letters to the 2 ministers involved to make that happen. We built a modern interactive website, which you're going to be learning about from Stacey later. And we've also reformatted the FSAC annual meeting as a virtual event. And we think there may be approximately 200 participants in that. Next slide, please. Okay, Stacey, over to you.
Sorry, hi. So as Peter indicated, the next part of our submission, or the next part of our presentation will be the website, which will be introduced by Stacey Bradshaw, our web developer. And Stacey's done a wonderful job all year in preparing this. So Stacey, if you wouldn't mind, please introducing yourself and then walking us through the website.
Thank you, Alison. So my name is Stacey Bradshaw, and I work at a Canadian business media group. We publish magazine titles in the agriculture, manufacturing, and food service sectors. In addition to that, I also assist nonprofit organizations and groups like the FSAC with their web presence and web development. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can take a quick walk through the new website. So first, I'd like to thank Peter and the rest of the board for inviting me to showcase the new website. The team approached me about upgrading the previous site to obviously give it a bit of a more modern aesthetic, but also to improve the functionality and sort of better highlight some of the excellent work that's being done by this group and bring it to the forefront in a more hopefully easy to read and easy to navigate format. So some of the information that we really wanted to highlight with this website is obviously the excellent work happening in the various working groups, and I understand we're going to hear from those groups later, as well as highlighting any news and information that's coming out from the various regulatory agencies, any trade memos, any new initiatives that are obviously relevant to the membership. So you can find most of that in the Learning Center, and a special section for the working groups. The website does have members only sections, so things like meeting minutes that are all available for you guys as members to view, and the member directory. So I would say roughly 80% of the site is designed for the public consumption, and some of it is behind a login screen that you have to be a member to access. So I'm just going to sort of run through the homepage so we can touch on all the various aspects. So you'll notice throughout the website that there is a clear call to action on most pages to encourage and solicit new memberships. So there is always some nice call to action here to outline why people should become a member. So on the first screen, you'll see a link to become a member, which will take you to this page. So on this page, we've outlined the 3 membership levels. And so if you're not already, which I assume most of you are, but if you're not already, you can come here, choose which membership level is appropriate, and you can pay through a credit card. We use a payment processor called Stripe, which is very, I would consider it to be an industry leading in terms of web development, so very safe and secure. So you can go ahead and purchase the membership online at any time. I imagine Peter and the group would be sending out renewal notifications and things for the next year. So if you do register on the website this way, then you are automatically registered with a profile and access to the website. So you would receive an email notification to that effect. If you are a member in good standing and have paid previously, not on the website, then Peter, I believe, has already sent out a link to the membership with a special unique code that will give you access so you can bypass this step since you've already paid. And if you haven't received that link, then you can simply reach out to Peter and he can send that to you. In addition to that, there's also a section for donations that can be made to the organization above and beyond the membership fee. And again, that's processed through Stripe and encrypted, so all very secure in that regard. If you are already a member and you have a login, then you can simply log in here, and I'm logged in currently, so you don't see it, but normally it would say login here instead of my profile. So once you're logged in, you will have access to all of the content that is posted on the website. So working my way down, we've allocated some space on the homepage for more timely information. So for example, the new regulations around the CFIA modernization initiative. So this was new and noteworthy. So we've sort of highlighted it on the homepage, and we will push it into the Learning Center when it's no longer new and noteworthy, and replace it with something new. So you can always come back to the homepage for, hopefully a sort of consolidated area where we can really all look at all the information that's relevant. In addition to that, we have a new section that we've built for job seekers and people looking to hire within the fertilizer and supplement space. So there's a description here of how the job center works. I put in quotes because it's, it says it's a passive conduit. So really just connecting job seekers and employers. It's not designed to be a complete job board where people are filling out applications, really just connecting the two. So there's an email there for people to contact the board if they would like to have some assistance in facilitating that for them. Who is the FSAC? So this is always here on the homepage, pretty much outlines the mission statement of the group. And again, a clear outline of why it's important and valuable to become a member. This section will always remain here. So if you're ever sharing the site with a colleague or potential new member, then you can rest assured that there's lots of information here for new members. The corporate member links is a section that we set up. So I'm just going to find my tab here. To highlight all of the corporate members. This gives everyone a sense of who else is participating, and hopefully gives new members assurance that this is the place for them. So if you notice your company is missing, or you need to update your logo or description, or anything needs to be corrected here, then you can simply reach out again to Peter at any time, or anyone on the board, and we can make sure we can get that corrected. But for the most part, I believe we have the comprehensive list of the corporate members. So that is behind the login gate, so you do have to be logged in to view that. There's a simple About Us section that outlines, information about the organization, who we are, mission statement, how the group came to be, how the committee came to be, and the sort of initiatives and mandate of the organization. So you can view that at any time. That is also public to the group. There's, as a nonprofit organization, there's information that we need to share, including funding and finance and business model. So if you ever want to review any of that information, again, it's open to the public to be viewed at any time. So working my way down, the working groups, which again, we're going to hear from later, that address specific regulatory issues, have a section on the website for each respective working group. So this is a place for each of these working groups to share any documentation that comes out of the working group meetings or the subcommittee meetings. So you'll notice minutes, any documentation that they'd like to share with anybody who's interested in the working group. So the two sort of active working groups are posted here, and you can view those at any time. And going back to the home page, quick access to each of the working groups can be found at the bottom of the home page. So there's two ways to get to the working group section. One is through the main menu, which is here, and one is through the call to action pieces here at the bottom. And again, a call for membership. So you'll see this in the footer of the website throughout, and some basic information in the footer. Of course, the obligatory contact page. So if you ever need to reach out, there is a generic email that goes to the board. So you can reach out to them at any time through that email address. And again, a call for membership. So I think, Allison, that concludes the tour. I was much shorter than my allotted time, so hopefully gives us lots of time for any Q&A, I suppose.
That's okay. Thank you very much for that, Stacey. I know I've enjoyed watching as this has been developed over the course of the summer and the autumn, and I think you've done a fantastic job on it. So thank you again.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to using this. So now, if the audience has any questions, again, please use the Q&A box at the bottom. We've got our first question coming in from Jeff. Will there be a point person we can direct any questions to, or help required for members with respect to finding everything to do with the website?
So yeah, I believe Scott Walker on the board is sort of the point person for any website related issues. And so between Scott and Peter, I believe you can get all of your questions answered there, and they'll reach out to me if need be.
Very good. Do we have any other questions? That was a good question, Jeff. Thank you. Oh, can we pay for the membership online?
Yes. So I'm still sharing my screen. Yeah. So I'll just scoot back to this section here. So so when you come to the homepage, there's a section that says become a member, I believe it's at the top here as well. It will say log in or become a member. So there's two different situations that you might find yourself in. One is that you have already paid your membership, and so you're in good standing, and then we can send you a unique link which will give you access. The other situation would be you are looking to renew your membership for the year, or becoming a new member, so you're not currently a member. And so in those two instances, you can come here at any time and choose the appropriate membership package, and you can pay with all of our major credit cards through here. So Visa, MasterCard, American Express. And then you will receive a receipt via email from both the website and the payment processor. So you'll have the receipt for your files.
Great. Thank you. We have another question here. What types of things can a member look to learn through the Learning Center?
Thank you for this question, because I realized that I skipped this part, not on purpose. And so I'll just pull up the page, and Allison might be able to talk more to the content itself, but again, any news coming out of the regulatory agencies that are relevant, public announcements that the group decides would be relevant to the membership, and just interesting articles, I think, that you guys want to share with the membership. So again, we're just sort of scratching the surface of how much content is going to be populated here, but this gives you a good sense of the type of stuff we'll be posting.
And to add to that, I think I would suggest that if from the membership we at the board, or for example, if Scott or Peter, or through the email address, if you have a suggestion for something you think should go in there, let us know. We're open to suggestions. We don't always see what comes through, but yes, hot topics.
Yeah, and that actually brings up a good idea. We could possibly add a form for people to fill in, just to share a link, just a quick and easy name and email, and here's something that might be of interest to the group. So maybe we'll put that on our to-do list.
Okay, we've got one more question here about how long does membership run? I think I can answer that one. I believe we go through to March. Maybe I shouldn't have answered that one. I believe our fiscal year follows that of the government, April to April, or end of March to end of March. I'll get Peter to answer that one later on in the discussion, if that's okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. I believe Peter reaches out when a membership is due, so he would reach out via email. But yeah, Peter can probably talk more to the length of the membership.
Great. Okay, that seems to be all of the questions that have come through, unless we've got any last minute ones. Nope. Okay, thank you very much, Stacy.
Thank you.
This has been really helpful. And now I think we're going to move on to the next part of our presentation.
Sorry, Allison.
Sorry, go ahead.
Here, see if I'm apologizing because I haven't figured out the Q&A portion, but I wanted to throw in a quick clarification, which is kind of important, is that I saw that on the site, what you can learn, it includes the notice to industry regarding polymers. This was really an advance notice. The notice to industry is not publicly available yet, as we are proceeding with ongoing conversations regarding the implementation timeline. with the stakeholders and Fertilizer Canada and other affected members. So it's not, at this point in time, it's kind of premature to introduce it as a done deal. So I would suggest that it probably should temporarily go down off the website. And once we kind of settled on the final timeline, we will let you folks know for sure.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Stacy?
I'm doing it as we speak.
Thank you. Okay. If there are no other questions, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is a report from the working groups that were active during 2020. First up, we have Amy Seraphin, who was leading the Heavy Metals in Hydroponics working group. And so this will be a bit of a refresher for those of you that were at CFIA Day a couple of days ago. So Amy, if you would please introduce yourself and then lead us through the activities of the working group, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Amy Seraphin. I work for Advanced Nutrients. Here we go. And I was the chair for the working group on the upper limits for heavy metals in hydroponic systems. Hold on a second. Can you go back 2 slides, please, Loretta? Okay, here we go. Yep, I was the chair for the working group for the upper limits for heavy metals in hydroponic systems for the Fertilizer and Supplements Advisory Committee. Next slide, please. The working group consisted of 25 industry members, which are listed here on the screen. And you'll all, of course, get a copy of the presentation so you can see who's involved at a later date. Next slide, please. The objective of the working group was to provide the industry input to CFIA regarding regulatory policy that was developed, the development of regulatory policy on the maximum heavy metal concentrations in fertilizers and supplements that were intended for hydroponic use. The strategy of the working group was to review the scientific literature, to review and discuss data that was provided by the members, and then to generate recommendations for CFIA on upper limits for heavy metals that could be acceptable by the manufacturers. Next slide, please. Okay, a little bit of the background. In fall of 2019, CFIA Fertilizer Safety Section identified the need to develop allowable upper limits for heavy metals in fertilizers and supplements intended for use in hydroponic cultivation. The 11 metals that they were concerned with are those same metals that we're concerned with for soil-based fertilizers. Again, we had 25 industry members participate in this working group. We met 5 times, and CFIA staff attended each one of those meetings. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the working group provided a report in May of 2020 to CFIA. We found no international regulations that separately regulated heavy metals for hydroponic fertilizers versus soil-based fertilizers. We found no evidence in the literature that the fertilizers were actually the contributing factor to high heavy metal concentrations found in crops. And we also considered that current heavy metal standards were based on data that considers the accumulative effects of heavy metals in soils, where hydroponic fertilizers do not have this cumulative component. And so therefore we expected that current standards would have higher limits than any standards that would be developed specifically for fertilizers or supplements that were used in hydroponic growing systems. Therefore, we determined no evidence of need for additional or stricter regulations of heavy metal concentrations in fertilizers for hydroponic use. And we requested that if CFIA chose to proceed with additional scoping or found anything additional that contradicted our findings or shed more light on our findings, that they contact us and that we were allowed to have another exchange about this. For those of you that attended Tuesday's presentations, Brett Tendler of the fertilizer safety section talked about and did an overview of CFIA's considerations of this report from this working group. And he outlined how CFIA intended to move forward to address the need that they had identified in 2019. Specifically, they concluded that CFIA would publish a notice to inform the industry the soil standards will be adapted to hydroponic systems. They would update the metals calculator to reflect the derivation of soil standards to hydroponic systems. And then they would update the trade memorandum to include fertilizers and supplements that were intended for hydroponic use. So this really brings full circle the initial identified need and now the conclusion and solutions. Thank you for your attention. And I think we can go to the next slide.
Great. Thank you very much, Amy. So again, if anybody has any questions on this, if you could put them into the Q&A box. I see we've got one question in so far. Oh boy. It's from an anonymous attendee. Why does CFIA require registration of fertilizer ingredients when they are not sold or applied to the plants as a fertilizer themselves?
So I'm not sure that's a question for me. I do know that Brett is attending here, and so, or maybe somebody from CFIA could answer that. I feel like maybe, could you read that one more time as well, Natalie or Allison?
Sure, yes. Why does CFIA require registration of fertilizer ingredients when they are not sold or applied to plants as a fertilizer themselves?
That is, Amy, I can help you out here, I think. It's FMAT. I don't even necessarily think that this is a question pertaining to hydroponic fertilizers and supplements, but Brett, feel free to jump in. If I understand it correctly, we are talking about fertilizer additives. So something that is actually added to a fertilizer or a supplement and then applied to plants. Am I misunderstanding the question?
I'm not entirely certain. If the anonymous attendee would like to add to the question using the Q&A box, I would appreciate it. Okay, active ingredients and inactive ingredients is the additional guidance.
Okay, so the new regulations that just came into force, so specifically identify and define active ingredients as something that the performance of the fertilizer or supplement is attributed to. Now the other, and I think if I am not wrong, that the question hovers around polymers actually, indirectly. But so the answer here is that the definition of a supplement or the interpretation of the definition of supplement was expanded following our discussions and ongoing conversations with Fertilizer Canada and other members with respect to nitrification and urease inhibitors. So as a result of these discussions, the definition of a supplement was looked at again and determined that it can include, or that it does include, products that are, or fertilizer and supplements additives that indirectly affect the physical condition of the soil or aid plant growth and yield. So in short, anything that affects the performance of the fertilizer and it's an active ingredient, it is regulated by us. The inactive or inert ingredients is a residual text that was proposed in Canada Gazette Part 1. That was really removed because it was very, very complicated and convoluted. But inert ingredients are basically elements that or ingredients that are added to a fertilizer to change its physical properties. So anti-dusting, anti-caking, that kind of physical properties. But as soon as something impacts the plant growth or crop yield, is itself regulated under the Fertilizers Act. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Attendee says thank you. That was a very good explanation. Are there any other questions for Amy?
Excellent.
All right, seeing none, thank you again, Amy, for that presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Loretta back to report on the dual purpose products working group. I know I've enjoyed this one all year. So Loretta, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alison, for introducing me again. And I should tell you back that I really enjoyed working in this group and having you as co-chair. So my presentation, I hope you can see a screen.
Yes.
Good, thank you. So my presentation today is to introduce our working group and progress we made up to this day. And first, I probably will repeat myself and not myself, also the information you probably have heard on November 5th, microbial session, where Michael Dowse from PMRA and Eva Maddy from CFIA talked about the dual property product regulations and initiatives in Canada. So quickly through the definitions, subject to Fertilizers Act, we have supplements, which are any substances or mixtures other than fertilizers, which are used for the improvement of physical conditions of soil or to aid plant growth. So that these substances could have a variety of different mode of actions, such as enhance plant growth, enhance nutrient availability, induce germination, sprouting, and so on. All these are subject to Fertilizers Act. While other pest control biological products would be subject to Pest Control Product Acts and regulated by PMRA. And these products would directly or indirectly control, destroy, attract, or repel pests or mitigate and prevent injuries and noxious troublesome effects on plants. So as you know, it is quite often very difficult to distinguish I mean, it's not difficult to distinguish two different properties, but often biological products, they may have two different properties, particularly microbials or bioactive organic molecules, plant hormones, and other active substances. So how these would be regulated in Canada? And here we have the issue where we cannot go and register this dual property product as one single product and a single label. So if company will decide that growth promotion properties are more important for this particular product, they will have to go through CFAA registration under Fertilizers Act. If crop protection properties would be higher priority, then you would have to go through PMRA registration under PCPA registration number and comply with PCPA. So overall, dual claims on single label with two registration numbers of CFAA and PMRA registration numbers are not permitted in Canada. And as you can imagine, that may introduce lots of confusions, misinterpretation, and probably even mislabeling if you are selling crop protection product, which also improve growth properties to plant, or if you are selling growth promotion product with crop protection properties. So this problem was identified during our January 2020 meeting. And immediately we formed a working group, and we are glad that CFAA and PMRA supported us and recognized that it's a high priority issue. And our working group started to work in February with the objectives to explore and recommend regulatory pathways towards a single label, which would be approved by both CFAA and PMRA, and could be used for products that have dual properties of growth promotion and plant protection. So as I mentioned, we started our work in February, and we started as a small working group with about 8 members. But as of today, our working group received lots of interest from industrial organizations, as well as non-for-profit organizations, and we grew up to almost 30 group members who are representing 19 industry organizations, also Fertilizers Canada, CropLife, FSAC members are involved, as well as we are thankful to CFAA and PMRA, who are dedicating some of their time and joined our group work even during this COVID-19 time when everybody is really struggling working from home and struggling with increased workload. So as of today, what we achieved. First, we had internal discussions with industry members to align our proposal, and that took several meetings just to work on the so-called dream label and try to combine and align requirements for PMRA and CFAA label. We definitely discussed our proposal also during several meetings with CFAA and PMRA, and finally, the final proposal from working group was submitted to CFAA and PMRA along with example, single label example for dual property product. As Eva Maddy and Michael Dowse presented on November 5th, CFAA and PMRA formed their own internal working group now to work together on our proposal to evaluate what can be done within a regulatory framework and to present this proposal to their senior management. So we are still now waiting and we are hoping that this proposal will be brought up relatively soon. I have to mention that current proposal includes microbial products only, which quite often have dual properties. But this is only a goal for pilot project, and we definitely think that in the future we can work with other products such as biochemicals. So what our expectations and future plans? First of all, we were proposing a couple of different pathways for registrations. So first option would include 2 parallel registrations at CFIA and PMRA and obtaining 2 registration numbers, which now can be put on the single label along with dual claims. And likely these changes would not require would not require changes in the regulations, at least what we've heard from our officials from CFIA and PMRA. The other proposal would be following fertilizers pesticides pathway, past fertilizers pesticides pathway, but with a repeal consortium from regulations that might be more difficult. How it was done before for fertilizers, pesticides, that active ingredient, pest control ingredient would be registered with PMRA as active ingredient, and then final product, fertilizer and pesticide active ingredient mix would be registered with CFIA, and Fertilizers Act number will appear on the label with dual claims. However, it seems like this might be a lengthy process as it may require changes to the regulations. And definitely, we are looking forward to work with the CFIA and PMRA on our pilot projects with microbial products. But as a future plans, we would like to expand dual property product list to other potential dual property products, types of dual property products. So our plan is now, as soon as the FAA and PMRA proposal will be discussed with the management, we will regroup hopefully in early 2021, and we'll continue our work on this project. And with that, I would like to thank you, and will pass to Alison.
Great, thank you, Loretta. I really have enjoyed this one this year. So now we have time. If anyone has any questions, we've got the Q&A box on your screen. We don't have any questions yet, but I'd like to pause just for a moment to see if any questions come in. I know this is a topic that we have been looking at for a very long time. At least I've been dreaming of for a very long time. So it was very nice to see some movement on it this year.
Yes, Alison, I agree.
If I could make a comment, Alison, it's not a question. It's just to recognize the importance of this topic and incidentally the effectiveness of FSAC in conjunction with the two regulatory agencies. It's a very rare instance for the industry to be able to make input and to suggest possible changes. This will be, I think, a first, and maybe Eva could comment on that. This will be a first where two agencies have approved a single label for a bag of product. This is a hugely important step for companies which are packaging millions of bags per year and would not be required to use multiple packages. So it is a major step forward. And very much congratulations to CFIA and PMRA for being willing to look at this. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Peter. Well, I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A, and I don't, whoops.
I think we already had lots of discussions and on November 5th, and now so we'll see, maybe a few more questions will be coming to the end, but
Sorry, I clicked several wrong buttons on my screen for a second there. Thank you
That's
again,
okay.
Loretta.
Thank you.
I think we can wrap this topic. So now it's part of the fun part of the day, which is the bear pit session, which Peter is going to lead us through. So what is the bear pit session? So something that we are missing out on in these Zoom meetings. We're not all in the same room. We're not sitting at tables together. We don't have a CFIA member sitting beside us to ask questions. And we don't get this chance to discuss how things have been going over the past year. So we don't have a chance to discuss the things that have been going really well, like kudos CFIA on meeting your overall service delivery standards. We don't have a chance to discuss things that maybe the membership might want to see changes on, or suggestions for things that could be improved. So now is that opportunity. What topics do you want to have addressed in the coming year? We just heard a lot of very exciting things from CFIA a couple of days ago. So how do we want to move forward from some of those things? What does the membership want to tackle next? What do you want FSAC to tackle next? So this is the discussion sort of for the members, by the members. And with this Zoom platform, of course, we are going to need to ask you to put things into the Q&A box so that we can have this discussion. And I'll ask all of the FSAC board of directors and also our special guests from CFIA to come on sort of after Peter has given his introduction to the topic. I'll ask everyone to come on and sort of help field the questions and the discussion. But first, I'll hand it over to Peter to sort of set the tone for this part.
Okay, well, thanks, Alison. Members who've been in attendance over the last number of years will know that we like to get input from everyone as to how we're going, which direction we're going in, and what topics there should be made and brought forward for future discussions. It's the opportunity for all the members to make input to our progress going forward and to hear your plaudits and also your complaints. Next slide, please. So one of the key areas here is there a need for new working groups. You've heard that we have 2 in progress at the moment, and the main purpose of FSAC is to advise regulators of what companies feel changes would be beneficial to the regulations. I would say that the suggestions that have been received in the past have been well received by CFIA particularly, and a very good working relationship has been built up. So much so, in fact, that we have this very unique situation where companies, regulated parties, are able to make input or make suggestions to the regulators as to what might work. And I would say that's also, it kind of works 2 ways, because on certain instances, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Fertilizer Safety Branch, likes to try and get input from the members before whilst or before they are working on new regulations. So it's a 2-way street, and it is, to my mind, provides great value. And it's also a model which is very rare in the industry government relationships. So we form the members, we form the working groups amongst members who have a specific interest in the topic the strength of the working group comes when it's an actual people who are directly in the trenches, making regulatory decisions, overcoming the hurdles, and so on and so forth. It is not the presidents of companies who sit aloft and see things from afar. And you're dealing and talking with the people who are, and on the government side, people who are the regulators. And I can tell you that the discussions are thorough, co-supportive. There is no argument going on other than strongly worded positions, of course, but it's totally non-adversarial. And it has been working very, very well so far. We have 2 in progress right now. And one of the things which we'd like to get in this rapid session is input from the members, the people. I see we have 80 odd people online as to what we should be doing next. And you've heard the 2 suggestions. And if we could just switch the screen again, please, Loretta. And at this point, yeah, we're talking about polymers and also about the possibility of getting some input on the regulatory changes that have been introduced, which are very far-reaching and quite detailed by CFIA, of course. And as it stands right now, a suggestion about the possibility of talking about a working group on the implications of polymers and that. Now, this was all written, of course, before Eva made the comment that it may be a little premature. So again, I would invite Eva, if she would be willing to comment on that during the discussion as to whether we should be looking forward to producing a polymers working group. Again, the impacts on industry are very substantial in that particular area. And we'd also strongly encourage people that are on the call to come up with ideas where they see regulatory irritants or things which could be made better, more efficient, better for industry, and hopefully better at the same time for the regulatory agency to move forward. Can we do the next slide, please?
Sorry, Peter. At this point, we would like to invite all the board members and also CFIA for the discussion. And please turn your videos and cameras.
I would just like to take a moment to point out who we have here from CFIA. Of our panelists, we have Eva Maddie from CFIA, who you've already heard from. We also have Natalie and Glenn and Brett, who were our presenters a couple of days ago. Thank you. I can see you guys now. Excellent. And as well, of course, our board of directors are on the line as well. So we're looking forward to hearing a lot from you in the chat box, and we're looking forward to picking CFIA's brains because, of course, this is what we would be doing. Yes, I'm looking at you, Glenn. This is what we would be doing if we were in person. We would be sitting down and we would be trying to corner Glenn or corner Natalie. I think I cornered Natalie last year. I think I cornered Brett at one point. Eva was far too quick for me. We would like to have this discussion sort of with the agency as well. So with that, the one question that I see in the Q&A from Teresa, a suggested topic would be polymer registration and regulation. I agree entirely. What additional would we like to talk about with that? I was wondering, based on Eva's comments, you're saying that the polymer document that was sent out hasn't really gone live yet. I'm wondering when you're anticipating that it'll be going live, and sort of what work do you see that we could do through a working group in preparation for that?
Okay, I don't hear Eva jumping in, so I can chime in. So that document that you had on your site was something we sent out to FSAC and to Fertilizer Canada as well as a bit of a pre-consultation piece. So we went out to the 2 major associations with the draft policy to say, this is what we're thinking of doing, and this is a bit of a proposed timeline, and then look to get some feedback from the associations so that we could look to modify or develop the proposal further before it then goes out again for more of a general broad consultation. So I think sort of what Eva pointed out there is really important. This is not something that's sort of written up, drafted, chiseled into stone, and January 1st, this is starting. This is very much a, okay, here's what we're looking to do. Here's a timeline we propose, but we're looking to hear feedback if it's unreasonable, if you need more time to figure out exactly what the impacts were. And we've heard that from other, some of the comments already received, then we're definitely open to hearing that. We're definitely open to adjusting the timelines and looking at modifying the proposal. So it's very critical that everybody understands that, as sort of shared with the two associations, this was a pre-consultation document.
So
And,
Glenn, thank
sorry.
you, Glenn. Can I jump in?
Yep.
Oh yeah, Eva, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just really quickly. I am not on camera because my internet connection is unstable. So, as the owner is apparently, but just to follow up, I think that Fertilizer Canada is really actively looking to continue the discussions that Glenn was referring to. So I think that it would be really beneficial for maybe a joint working group between FSAC and Fertilizer Canada. Apparently, there has been, well, what we heard from Fertilizer Canada is that there is a lot of information that they have to gather from the members in order to actually suggest a concrete implementation timeline. So in terms of, you know, who is selling what's really already in the marketplace and stuff like this. So I think that the polymer registration is definitely a great topic, particularly if FSAC wants to join forces with Fertilizer Canada.
Okay.
If I could just quickly comment on that, there was certainly, we would obviously be talking to Fertilizer Canada about this. It's obviously an opportunity to move forward on this very important topic.
So if I understand correctly, Eva and Glenn, I think that this is quite a right time to start working with people and discussing proposed policy for polymers. And the sooner we start this discussion, the better. Is that correct?
That is correct. The one thing that I guess a tiny nuance that I want to introduce in here, we are talking about the implementation timeline as opposed to the concept itself. So the concept itself is something that basically naturally and logically followed the conversation about nitrification inhibitors and urease inhibitors. So this is sort of a direct next step that follows again the same kind of approach. However, what we are definitely open to suggestions and working with the industry to fine-tune the proposal with respect to implementation timeline, exactly, particularly for products that are already in the marketplace.
Can I ask also then, if you are looking for our input on implementation timelines, I think we would need definitely a bit more information on what type of requirements, what type of data we would have to submit. And only after evaluating this information, we can comment on timelines according to the information required, I assume.
Actually, that is a great opportunity for you folks to identify as one of the topics of the subsequent webinars. It is not related directly to regulatory modernization. I understand that it's sort of a satellite issue. However, if there is interest among the regulated parties to have a bit more in-depth conversation and discussion about the requirements, you know, we are more than happy to entertain it because we are already planning the subsequent webinars. We don't have we haven't processed or digested the suggestions yet that we received on Tuesday. And Natalie is going to be running the webinar anyway, so so it's definitely, no, when it comes to specific questions and requirements, please do direct them to Natalie. And if there is interest, we can definitely have a broader discussion as part of a webinar.
Thank you, and I can tell you immediately after presentations, I just jumped on Natalie since she provided her email, and I immediately sent some questions. And thank you for the answers got just this morning.
Anytime, happy to help.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in that draft industry notice that was shared does identify the type of information that would be required to support a registration. And these are products that already required a safety review by CFIA before they could enter the marketplace. So there's no new requirement on the data side. The only thing that would change would be that since the products are now being registered, they'd have to have a label that's compliant with the Fertilizers Act. The safety requirements would be unchanged, and they are outlined again in that draft industry notice.
And I think what I understood, my understanding, there will be some new requirements, at least what I understand. If we, for example, I'm talking about biologicals because I'm in this area, but if we have biological product, which active ingredient is microorganism, and we have polymer just for maybe antifoam reason, stability reason, this polymer now will have to go through the guaranteed analysis. We have to provide tab 3 data, if I understand correctly, even if this polymer is produced by third party. And that what I think from my perspective, it's a huge burden to the producer of the, for example, biologicals or supplements, because third-party information, as you know, is quite often not easy to access and quite often not easy to push third-party company to submit information which is required for product registration in a timely manner and complete information what the CFIA is looking for.
So Loretta, if I can jump in here, it's kind of a multi-part question. So to begin with, a polymer that's only used for anti-foam or something that's not affecting the performance of that product as a fertilizer or supplement, that would not be included as an active ingredient polymer. That does not fall into this. This discussion. So those anti-foams, they're still going to be assessed the same as they always have been, a brief method of manufacture, a brief description of what they are. So we can still, and we still do, we always have looked at those for any residual hazardous components that could be there, monomers, things that could be of safety concern. But those are not going to be assessed like at a higher level than before. It's status quo, absolutely. As far as third-party information, if you did have a polymer that was an active ingredient, it was contributing to the performance of that product as a fertilizer or supplement, they always have the option to submit directly to us under confidential business information rules. So in that case, they would submit directly to us. We would not communicate with you, the applicant, about the information they shared with us unless they directly tell us in writing that they would like us to or are okay with that. So they have that option to submit directly to us, and then we can do our assessment as required without breaking that confidential business information panel between yourselves and the third party. So that is an option for them, and it's something that we do pretty often.
Great, thank you very much, Natalie. What a relief! I thought that every polymer will have to be included in guaranteed analysis.
Only the supplement ones.
only which would improve basically plant performance, right?
The performance of the product, or yes, exactly.
But not like stabilizers or thickeners or antifoam and so on. No.
Correct.
Great. I'm happy.
And to be honest, Loretta, in a lot of these cases where there was a complex formulation like this, where the primary is a biological, we were already assessing these polymers. And in the case where they were actives, we've already been asking to include them, because that's the regulation, is that all actives have to be in the guaranteed analysis. So it's not new.
Thank you. You made my day.
Happy to help.
Natalie, this is Amy Serafin. I have a question about this, and I asked this yesterday when Eva went through these slides about the changes to the Modernization Act. I had asked about the definition of active for this very reason. And so you just now, I must be miscommunicating, because I feel like what was answered yesterday is contradictory to what you just said. We have some ingredients that we use as stabilizers or preservatives that we're being required to list in our guaranteed analysis.
Okay, so in some cases, an ingredient can have multiple uses or a multiple potential. It could be an active or an inert, and it depends on how you're using it, at what concentration, and the application rates, how it's intended to be used. So it's on something like ascorbic acid. Actually, I'm not sure if it has use as only a stabilizer, but if there's a case of something that at a higher concentration could have an effect on plant growth, but at a very, very low concentration is only moderating the pH or something very small and not having a direct effect on the performance of that product, then that's something we can look at on a case-by-case basis. And so it really comes down to what is the function of that ingredient in that product.
Okay, so I would just need to identify to CFIA the intention of the ingredient, and then that would be considered in the, okay.
It'd be considered, and we'll go to the literature and look at the intended rates and the intended concentrations that you're applying them at. Now, if it comes to the case where you're saying it's only being used as a colorant or something similar, but then we go to the literature and find that same material is being used and has a positive effect on plant growth at those same levels, then we would still require it to be guaranteed, because it is considered an active ingredient. So that would be kind of the decision-making paradigm there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have another question on a completely different topic, but I'm not sure if we're done with this one.
I guess what I was going to ask on this topic is, do I understand correctly that there is a suggestion for Fertilizer Canada and the Fertilizer and Supplements Advisory Committee to work together on some sort of joint working group on this topic? Is that something that we wish to put forward for 2021?
I'm not sure whose responsibility is to reply to that question, but I mean, from the CFIA standpoint, we're always happy to hear it as one voice, but in any case, I mean, the document did go out to solicit comment. So we're anticipating some feedback from Fertilizer Canada. We'd be more than happy if you guys got together and sort of as a joint group, you then have representation from across the sort of the market, both people who are producing it and people who are looking to incorporate it in their products, et cetera. So it's great to have a single voice, but either way, we are looking to hear back so that we know whether or not what was put forward was reasonable, or to hear an alternative in terms of what's more reasonable in terms of when that sort of 2-year period they're proposing would kick off. So if January 1st isn't reasonable, is it more reasonable sort of late spring, or but that's kind of what we're looking to hear back, as well as other concerns that we might not have identified. Or
sorry, and not to kind of rush you, but from what I understand, Fertilizer Canada is really keen on having these ongoing conversations literally as soon as possible. If you take a look at the very draft pre-consultation notice, the timeline there actually identified January 1st as the beginning of the implementation phase, which caused a lot of indigestion. for Fertilizer Canada. So I would, if you are going to join forces, which I think it's always a great idea, like Glenn said, I would recommend that you do it sooner than later.
If Peter McCann, if I can jump in here, I'll make it my job to contact Fertilizer Canada and see what we can do to work together on this, and it's certainly a good opportunity to do that. Clyde will be the obvious first person, but I also suspect that Jim Jenkins might be involved, since he was obviously very knowledgeable on the subject during his presentation the other day. Thank you.
So the next topic that I'm seeing in the Q&A, I'm going to sort of set the polymer topic aside now. The next topic that I'm seeing in the Q&A is, and I don't know that this is a topic for a working group or whether this is just an open question. And sorry, Amy, I'll get to your question after we do this one that came through on the chat. On the chat, the anonymous attendee has asked, what type of inspection and enforcement mechanism does CFIA utilize? For example, enforcement of upper and lower tolerance limits, for example, micronutrients in fertilizers. I'm thinking that's a question to CFIA again.
Sorry. Yeah, no, clearly. I just can't figure out the unmute button. Like I said, my computer is not helping me out today. So the tolerances are administered the same way as any marketplace monitoring activities that are conducted by the field inspection staff. So when the samples, now there's a whole obviously consideration when it comes to COVID and in on-site inspections and stuff like this. But in general, the micronutrient tolerances are administered by our inspection staff, and the results of analysis that come back from the CFIA laboratory are actually measured against the tolerances that are incorporated right now into, well, have been for some time, into the calculator. So the inspectors look at the results of analysis, compare them, enter them into the calculator, and based on that determine whether the product is compliant or not.
I think I can add to that a little bit. So those tolerances, I think we developed them maybe a little over 2 years ago in working through CFPF. They're present in our trade memoranda on safety standards, which is T493. It outlines the tolerances for micronutrients. As I mentioned on the 17th, which is 2 days ago now, during the January 2020 meeting, we talked about establishing a working group on upper tolerances for nitrogen and phosphorus. That didn't happen during the year. So we'll be looking at establishing that working group moving forward. And the result of that will be the tolerances we'd look to apply to those nutrients. So hopefully that kind of covers the question.
Does anyone from the audience have anything else that they want to add on this topic? If you do, feel free to use the Q&A box, and let's keep the discussion going on this, because it sort of sounded to me like Glenn is expecting us to create a working group. We like working groups, so tell me through the Q&A box, please, that there is interest from the membership on this topic. We don't want to let Glenn down.
Yeah, so this is, I think it was in the What We Heard last year. We talked about it. There was a presentation on establishing upper tolerances for NMP. And out of that, sort of the wrap up of the session, one of the things we will do going forward was to establish a working group on that, along with hydroponic metals. And there was a third one that I'm now forgetting. So we checked off hydroponic metals. We've had a really good year working on that. The NNP one is just one we never established. So yes, moving forward, it would be a wonderful topic for a working group.
See, there is one person who has commented that they're very interested in the topic and would like to be on the working group. So excellent.
Sounds like I won't be alone.
Yeah, we can initiate the start of that, Glenn, from FSAC in our usual way, which is calling for volunteers and expressions of interest and so on. And that would normally yield about 20 to 25 interested parties, plus, of course, people from the fertilizer safety section.
Yeah, that's great, Peter. We can always look to sort of pull together some of the material we presented back in January to sort of feed the conversation, because that's what led to the very first mention of forming a working group on this. So that way anybody who's expressing interest would have a little bit of a sense of what we're looking to do.
And just like the working group on the hydroponic metals, which we definitely commend you folks for doing all the work. It was really, to a large extent, the data that was provided by individual companies and which contributed to our decision in that particular area. So with NNP tolerances is even going to be more important. That we talk the same language, whether it's commercial or input materials, but also that I am sure as part of quality assurance, a lot of companies actually monitor that on their end, and that kind of information would be very helpful for us as well.
So just to summarize that a little bit, if I can leap in here, we're talking about a new working group on upper tolerances for nitrogen. We're looking at the dual purpose working group going forward. I'm not sure where we are with the hydroponics one. Is there more discussion on that? Maybe the guy to talk to is Mr. Tedler. Or are we truly finished with that one? And it leaves open the question of, which is really for Eva and the regulators, is there value in starting another working group on the regulatory modernization initiative, which you've announced and which is implemented? And I'm thinking that in terms of interpretation and further questions and so on. I understand, of course, that CFIA is going ahead with a series of workshops and so on and so forth, so doing their own position on that. Is there any advantage to putting it together one working group to discuss some of the options and some of the impacts and so on about the reg mod with members of the CFPF, with the CFPF as well, but also with the FSAC? Eva?
Well, I will let Brett sort of address the hydroponic one, but when it comes to the regulatory modernization working group, we were hoping that, the subsequent webinars and the updated trade memoranda and reference materials would actually provide enough clarity for people to proceed and adopt the new regulations. I think that it may be a little bit premature at this point to start up a working group for FSAC and Fertilizer Canada, because we want to, I think that everybody, us included, but the regulated parties need to test the system out, like see how it's working, to fully understand what remains to be addressed or clarified. So I think that after the webinars are there and we have a bit of a more download of information, then you can look into establishing a working group to address the outstanding requirements sometime in the new year.
Okay, then. So what we're saying is we'll form a working group if it is called for during the course of the year, if people feel there'll be some benefit in it. No point in starting these sorts of things just for the sake of having another working group. Good.
And Brett?
For the hydroponics working group, the ball is in our court right now. We're working on drafting the industry notice and finishing off the updates on the derivation and the calculator. So the working group doesn't need to do anything right now, but once we get that finalized, we will reach out to the working group and let you guys have a chance to respond and go from there.
Good.
Excellent. Okay, I have one more topic on this, which Amy had suggested because she can't get into the Q&A box, which I agree I can't either. So Amy, what was your question? You're on mute in case you want.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay, thank you.
There we go.
So this is a completely new topic. And so this is a question for CFIA. I'm wondering if there is any intention or has been any work developing standards for organic input materials for our, the fertilizers and supplements that are used for organic crop production to be certified for hydroponic crops. My understanding is that the current organic standards do not include crops that are grown hydroponically. So there's not really a path for hydroponic nutrient companies to be able to certify their input products for organic crop production. And so I would like somebody to let me know what that situation is.
Well, that is even broader question, Amy, because there is no organic certification by CFIA. There's no Canada Organic logo for fertilizer, period, hydroponic or otherwise. So, so at this at this juncture, the organic certification, and it's something that we as the fertilizer safety section wouldn't administer. It is the Canada Organic office within the CFIA, but like I said, there are no standards, and therefore the organic certification is not applicable to fertilizer at this point at all.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was like, when we look at like an organization like OMRI, the Organic Material Review Institute, who third-party certifies, they will, and so this might just not be the right group, is what I hear you telling me, but they say that they do have the Canadian Organic, I think it's regimen, that they can certify against, but not for any fertilizer that's intended for hydroponics, that's not included. So if any of you guys know, and I guess if it's not this group, if CFIA can just maybe point me in the right direction at a later date, I would really appreciate that.
Amy, if I can just quickly touch on this, we do work with EcoCert in Canada to get our products attested. So they're not certified organic, but they are attested for use in organic agriculture. And we do have hydroponic fertilizers attested through EcoCert.
Okay, okay, thank you. I'll try EcoCert. I had talked to OMRI about this and they said that Canada doesn't allow it for any hydroponic use fertilizer, but maybe they're just unaware. So thanks, Megan.
That being said, we do have conflicting feedback occasionally between OMRI and EcoCert. They might have different interpretations, but so far we've been good.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing anything else in the Q&A, but I'll probably give you another, I'd say 30 to 45 seconds to enter something in if you wanted to, before we move on to our next topic. I'm very happy with the feedback that we've had so far and the discussions that we've had so far about this. I think it's given us a bit of a good direction to move in. Still not seeing anything, so thank you to all of our panelists who were there to answer this. Thank you, CFIA, for answering so many questions for us. It looks like we've got a fun year ahead of us. Next up, because we didn't have any other questions from before, we have Peter McCann to take us through the FSAC business meeting. So, Peter.
Thank you very much once again, Alison. We're coming towards the end of this session, and since we look like we might be finishing early, I presume we all get bonuses for that. If you could put up our first slide, the business meeting, okay, the objectives which we've talked about before, to advise fertilizer regulatory agencies on improvements that will benefit for fertilizer companies whilst maintaining the integrity of the Canadian system. Again, it's very much, as I mentioned before, a two-way street. And the regulatory agencies, particularly CFIA, do in fact value the input which members can make through the working groups. And we heard that plea from Glenn just a little while ago, which we will activate on. So on the next slide, please. One of the things I mentioned just before looking at this is that we have recently incorporated our organization in the province of Ontario. So we are now Fertilizer and Supplements Advisory Committee, Inc. A revenue statement, you can see where we're at just very briefly. We're well covered and we're going forward to we will go forward to the new year starting at April 1st, as Alison was talking about earlier, with a small surplus, and we'll be sending out requests for people to renew their membership at that time. The next slide, please. List of the members, just to give you an idea of the range of people you can see: individual consultants, you can see large multinational corporations, you can see medium-sized companies and so on. So it's very broad, and it's very important that the membership continue to broad and indeed grow, because when we're talking to the regulatory agencies, they like to know that we are broadly representative, that we're not specifically representing big companies or small companies or multinationals, but right across the board, and that is what we're getting, and that's where some of the value of CFPF comes from. Okay, next slide, please. So we once again invite people to join FSAC. You can do it through the website, as you saw, as explained by Stacey earlier in the presentation. We are happy to discuss issues and exchange views with regulatory professionals from across North America, over and above the work we do through the working groups on specific topics. And it looks now as though we're going to have 1 dormant and 3 going forward into the new year. We'll get those moving from here straight away. And any questions on the organization or membership or the topics, if you would like to address them to me, Peter McCann, you can do it through the website by telephone at my phone number here in beautiful downtown Brighton, Ontario, 613-475-4752. And we'll be happy to, very happy to explain and give more information on what we're trying to do here. I think we have got a valuable organization which has proved its value to the companies and also to CFIA over a short existence, which is less than a year. And we hope to go on to bigger and better things in the future. Thank you very much, and I will hand it back to Alison.
All right, thank you, Peter. So we did want to open it up one last time. If there was any comments from the audience, are there things that we left out? Any final thoughts on how this session ran? So feel free to enter your information into the Q&A box. While you're doing that, though, I have a couple of thank yous and I have a reminder for you. So before you go, thank you to the audience for the participation today. That was wonderful. Thank you again very much, Fertilizer Canada, for hosting the Zoom platform for this. Thank you, Alison Watcher. You have been invaluable in preparation for this, not only for this session, but for all of these CFPF sessions that have been held over Zoom. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to CFIA for joining last minute to today's call and answering so many questions. Thank you to Kevin and Brandon and all of the people at WeStream. Thank you for making us all look good in this. Thank you to our presenters, Stacey and Amy, and also to my fellow FSAC Board of Directors for helping us through all of this. And now, of course, finally, a reminder, as I'm not seeing anything coming in on the Q&A, a reminder, the last session, the keynote speakers are coming up on November 25th. So it's Mark and Ben Cullen and Frankie Flowers. So if you haven't signed up, you should, like I say, November 25th, it's coming right up. If you need more information, you can of course contact Alison Watcher, or you can go to the Fertilizer Canada website and sign up for it the same way that you signed up for this one. So with that, thank you very much for attending, and I look forward to seeing you all on the 25th.